Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining in the session. Today, we're going to take you through the NRF postgraduate bursary system and probably give you a few hints and tips on how to apply. Tell you what the do's and don'ts are with regard to the system. The NRF has moved to a new system now, NRF Connect. So I encourage everyone to try and log into the system before you actually start the application process. I know that some people have been having a bit of a problem trying to get into the system, trying to connect. So I encourage you to do that before you even attempt to try to put your application in and make sure that everything works. So thank you for joining us, and I hope today the session shouldn't be longer than an hour and a half or so. I'll try to have a break sort of halfway in between, give you a 5-minute break or so, and then continue with the second half of the program. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll make a start. I also want to acknowledge that we also have Professor Kutsa as well, who's part of the Zoom meeting. She's also has a lot of experience with NRF documents, with NRF applications, with the systems that we submit our applications on. So she might also want to give some comments and guidance as we go through the presentations. Please feel free to ask questions as I go along, but I will stop at regular intervals during the presentation and take questions as we move through the presentation. Just all right. I think you can all see my screen. If you can see my screen, just someone let me know. Mankai, Teresa, can you see my screen?
We can see your screen, sir.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great, great. Thanks. I think the networks are slightly unstable, so just let me know if you can't hear, if I need to repeat anything as we go along. All right, so this is the talk that's going to help you prepare for your NRF postgraduate funding for research and your NRF proposals. And the structure of the talk is going to be, I'm going to give you an introduction and a purpose, which we'll do now. And after I do that, I'm going to spend a lot of time on the scorecard and the review criteria, and hopefully take you through those processes as to how we go about looking at the applications and how we go about scoring your applications before they actually reach the NRF. They have to be screened first by an internal panel, and normally that happens within the schools, and then I sit as a moderation panel together with the academic leaders of research, and we decide on if there's any applications which we should reject at the university stage. And generally those are ones that are pretty badly written and so forth. Then I'm going to go on to the second part and show you what to write and how to write it, give you a bit of tips on how to write and what to write there, tell you a little bit about checking, how to gather opinions, and the importance of the supervisor or your potential supervisor during this whole process. So hopefully we go along this line. So just to give you an introduction and the purpose, the reason why we're doing this is to give you the best possible chance to be funded by the NRF for your master's and PhD studies. And we're hoping that you submit something that's good, something that you can be proud of, and something that the assessors can actually look at and deem it a worthy proposal to fund. So at the end of the day, we want you to put your best foot forward in these particular proposals. I'm just having a little bit of lag on my side. I'm just going to stop sharing there and try to share again. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is jump into the scorecard and tell you how we go about in rating these proposals. Now, if you look at this particular blue boxes that you see on your top right-hand corner on the spreadsheet, you'll see that it has 4 categories. The first category is academic merit, then completion time for your previous degree, a priority research area, and then a project outline. And from those marks, you will get an overall score. And you can see here that they're normally between 0 and 3. And I'll show you in a little while how we actually look at rating you between 0 and 3. So a perfect score here will be 3. And the lower you get, the less perfect you get, and the less your chances will be of getting selected. So I'm going to switch the screen now into the next one. Show you the criteria for the scorecard. So this is the scorecard that we use to screen the applications. And if you look at this particular scorecard, and I'll go through the master's first and then take you to the PhD, there's slight differences between a master's application and a PhD application. And that's particularly because the master's application is normally a 1-year project, you know, and a PhD application is normally 3 years. So they look at the two differently. And normally one would expect a PhD to do a much larger body of work than a master's student and provide some novelty in that research as well, right? So a lot of our students do provide novelty at the master's stage, but that's, you know, not a requirement at the master's level. But at the PhD level, novelty is a requirement in your particular studies. So hopefully we have that novelty in the PhDs. So if I look at this particular setting, if you look at the scorecard here, what you'll see is the scoring for the academic merit. And generally what the scoring for the academic merit is, it's done very objectively. So, and you can see here that if you get 75% average for your previous degree, then you will score higher and you'll get your 3 points for that without any doubt. If your score is between 70 and 74, then you get a 2, 65 and 69, you'll get a 1, and then a 0 if your score is below 65. And generally, you'll find in the criteria that if your score is below 65, you're not eligible for funding. So a lot of the points that, and a lot of the final mark is based on this particular 35%, and based on your particular grade that you have achieved in your previous degree. And I think part of the reason for that is that they want to fund people with the best chance of success. So all these indicators that you'll find in this particular scorecard is there to provide the judges or the evaluators with indicators to probably assess the students with the best possible chance of succeeding in their degrees. So you'll find that that's done very objectively. The completion time for their degree is also done very objectively, and you see that's given a rating of 15%. And you can see that the minimum prescribed period, if you complete your degrees, if you're a master's student, if you complete it within 1 year and want to do a PhD, that will hold you in good stead. If you are an honor student and want to do masters and you complete in that minimum time, that will also hold you in good stead. You'll get full complement of marks there, 3 there. And the longer you take for your degrees, an extra 6 months will get a 2, an extra 12 months, you'll get a 1. And if you take your degree plus 2 years, then you actually get 0. So you should be taking within at least getting your degree within minimum time plus 1 in order to score anything in this particular category. Category number 3 is the priority research area, and also done objectively because the NRF has a number of national priority research areas, and they specify that in their documents and they specify that in the application. So there's not much you can actually do there, but generally all when I say our, I mean the science and agriculture, all our fields are in those priority research areas. So most of you will find that you will be doing projects in those priority research areas, such as water, climate change, energy, health, and the likes. So there's many things that you can actually choose here in those priority research areas. And that also carries 20%. So a fifth of the total mark is also carried by that priority research area as well. So most of you, as I say, will actually achieve that, and you will get marks within that. And that's an all or nothing. So if it's not a national research priority, you don't get any marks there. And if it is, you get 3 marks. And as I say, most of our students score highly in this particular area. And I think that's to feed into the South African, national priorities of health and climate change and energy and water, etc., to make the country a bit better for all of us. And then the last one is the project outline. And this is the one that we're going to spend a bit of time on today. And hopefully in this project outline, we can show you how to actually write this into a decent proposal that you're going to submit. And you'll find that within this project outline, there are concepts in here as well. You'll have an overview of the research concept, which is 15%, a proposed aim, 5%, and significance of the research, which is 10%. So please note that within this project outline, there's a number of things that you have to show as well while you're writing this project proposal. Now, how we score this, and you'll see that this is also 30%. So if you look at this rating, this 30% is comparable with the academic merit. So even if you didn't score well in your academic merit, you probably got 65%, you can score well in your projects by getting a high mark here as well. So this carries just a little lower than a third, while this just a little higher than a third. So these 2 areas are actually quite important. You need to do well, and you need to write a good project proposal. It's no use doing very well and then writing a poor project proposal that scores a 1 or a 0, because in that case, you probably stand the same chance as someone who didn't do well in their degrees and wrote a very good proposal, right? So this project outline that you're going to be involved in is very important. Now, there's 3 different areas here. And the first one is that if your project outline is comprehensive, right, you're going to score a 3. The next one is adequate, which is a 2, and then partially summarizing the major aspects of 1. And then if it's a very poor proposal, you'll get a 0. Hopefully you won't get 1s or 0s. You will get 1s and 2s, the 3s and the 2s. And I'll tell you the difference between the 3s and the 2s in a second. I just want to move on first and then just, okay, that's a doctoral one. All right, so the difference between a 3 and a 2 when you're writing your proposal is that in the first instance, someone that scored a 3 would have actually looked at the literature, would have gone deeper into their projects, would have researched the area, knows exactly what they're going to do. They would have found the gaps in the literature. They would have highlighted significant works that are going to be similar or in the similar areas of their own work, and showed firstly how their work fits into the bigger scheme of things. So more often than not, you don't just get up one morning and decide to do research and choose something and say, I want to cure the world or rid the world of cancer or rid the world of tuberculosis or malaria. You don't just get up one morning and decide to do that and write a proposal. You would go and read around the subject. And we find that those that score 3s and 2s are the ones that read around the subject, and those who scored 1s and 0s are the ones that, did a last-minute job in the last 2 days before the deadline. They decided to put an application in, so they went there and decided to write something in the different boxes. And you can actually see that in going through the proposals And generally, those are the ones that we do not submit to the NRF. You must remember that UKZN wants to put its best foot forward and wants to try and send our best applications forward to the NRF to be appraised by them. Right, so generally that's what happens. And I'm going to show you now the difference between the 3s and 2s. And maybe just to reiterate, the difference between a 3 and a 2 is one that contains a significant amount of references, and I'll quantify what significant means in a second, but it contains a significant amount of references and shows how your work will either fit into the project or build around an idea which already exists, right? So for instance, there will be people that are looking for new energy sources. And if people are looking for new energy sources, you would now need to show how either you're going to build on an energy source that already exists, or if you got something totally new, where it's going to fit in the realm of things, right? For example, you might have energy from coal, you've got energy from nuclear sources, you're going to have energy from something else. And when you have energy from something else, it's not just to say, okay, I'm going to now think about collisions. If I bang two pieces of boulders together, I'm going to get energy, and we're going to try and harvest that. You're going to have to show how your research actually builds on something that has sort of proven its ability to attract interest in terms of generating energy, right? So you don't just come up with an idea, and at the end of the day, you want someone to give you money to do this work. So you're going to have to be as convincing as possible that your idea is a good one, that your idea is based on sound principles, it's based on stuff that's already been done, right? So you're going to do all that. And if you actually have that, that will be a comprehensive proposal, right? And if I actually try to quantify this, I would say that someone at a master's level would be expected to read around 25 to 30 relevant references, right? And cite about 20 to 30 of these references, right? So you might want to read about 50 abstracts and choose the 25 or 30 that's related to the research work that you have and cite them in your outline, right? So that's the way to go about doing that. And to get a 2, it says the project outline adequately summarizes the major aspects. So you notice there's a subtle difference here. One is comprehensive and one is adequate. So one says, okay, I can see that the student has actually gone and done a good job. He's read all the relevant literature around that aspect. I can see he showed where his interests now lie, and he has a good chance of success. The other says that he has looked at some literature, but he probably left out some important aspects, some important literature that's current. So you might find that this particular student went out, they told people all about energy, but they missed out in the last 3 years or 5 years, there were major movements in that particular field. And this particular student didn't actually go into those major developments like this comprehensive one did, right? But nevertheless, they've had all the background of the energy, and they've put in references and so forth. So the subtle differences between the first one and the second one is the first one keeps up to date with comprehensive, the up-to-date literature, and is quite comprehensive. So they've got a mix of what happened in the last 5 years, maybe what happened since the inception, and not too much, don't go back like 50 years and write too much. But the person who did a comprehensive job would have introduced the subject, would have also gone and said, this is what happens currently, and this is how I'm going to build on. This person would have said, in 1950, they started things and they looked at energy sources, and now I'm going to do this, right? Didn't actually say how the field progressed in the last 50 years and currently in the last 3 to 5 years, what happened. Because you must remember, most people are really worried in the last 3 to 5 or 10 years, what really happened in that field. And if nothing happened in the last 3 to 5 or 10 years, you have to say that. You know, I've surveyed the literature in the last 10 years. There wasn't really a move on this. The last time something happened in this field was in 2005. And since 2005, no one has thought about this until now. In 2022, I have this idea to build on the last paper from 2005, right? So then it will move to being comprehensive, because although nothing happened in the last 15 years, you've stated that and you've searched the literature, and you also have to be quite confident as well that you've looked in all the different sources that you could, right? So it's very, very important that you include a purpose for the research, a proposed aim, and show what the significance is. Now, the purpose of the research is why you're doing it, right? So if you want to find new energy sources, and you know, there's no problem with energy at all, right? We've looked at the various energy sources. We're using solar panels in South Africa. We you know, moved away from coal-based energy sources. We're using nuclear power. You know, there's no real problems around energy. You don't really have a purpose, right? But South Africa hasn't gone that way, right? South Africa hasn't gone into the nuclear power realm yet. We're still burning coal for energy sources. And I'm sure all of you, I'm using energy now because we currently have load shedding and around South Africa. So you probably know that South Africa has an energy crisis, you know, currently. So that's a good reason now to do research in that area. So the purpose here is to create or make, you can either create a new energy source or you can improve on an existing energy source, right? And that can be the purpose of your research. And the purpose would be, or the ultimate aim would probably be to create a new energy source, or to probably get South Africa to use nuclear energy instead of coal-based energy. That would be your aim. And the significance of that research would be so that South Africans don't really have, you know, have to worry about energy in the next 50 or 60 years, because they now have this particular resource to look into. And then you would go and see, so if you're going to choose nuclear energy as your research topic, you're going to have to go to probably countries that do use nuclear energy, countries that used it and there were problems, and how you're going to get around them. So you want to show a comprehensive type of literature search in this particular area. So that's one thing you actually want to do. For the purpose, you need to know exactly why you're doing it. Proposed aim, what are you going to do? And significance of the research is, why is it now important in a South African context, and why is it important to you and the people around you, and especially the people that you're doing the research for. And it might be that you're doing global research as well, right? You could be looking at you know, transport, and not only in South Africa, globally, how to fly from here to India in less than 5 hours, how to go from here to Canada and take, you know, 3 or 4 hours rather than two or 3 days. You might be wanting to do research in that area. You can see a purpose for that. You can see a proposed aim, and you can see significance of that to cut down in time. Imagine flying from here to the US in 3 hours. You know, you could have a meeting in the morning, go to the US, come back in the afternoon. So that would be quite significant if you do research in that area. I'm going to move on from that now into the PhD scorecard and show you the difference between the master's and the PhD. Now, the difference between the master's and the PhD is that you'll notice that there are a few more other things included in the PhD. And I think the reason for the PhD one is to ensure that your PhD has novelty in their research. So you want your PhD students to show you some sort of novelty, some sort of new finding, some sort of groundbreaking type of research that's going to add to the body of knowledge that we already have, right? So normally PhDs have that extra element to it. And again, you see the point number 1. Again, you're going to have to show that you have a track record, that you do know that, if I succeeded at my master's, there's a very good chance that I'm also going to succeed at my PhD. And you get marks for your master's, you get a cum laude or not. If it's a cum laude, you get a 3, or you finish with 75%, you get a 3. A 2 is between 70 and 74, and a 1 is between 65 and 69. And then, you're not eligible if you get below 65. And then again, completion time for your previous degree. If you do take a year for your master's, you complete it in the prescribed minimum time. If you do take an extra 6 months or a year, then you go down to a 2 or a 1. And if you took longer than 2 years, then you don't really get any points for that in your if you're a master's student going on to do a PhD. If you're a student that wants to do a PhD and you're currently doing a master's, then people will look at your 4-year undergraduate degree, right? So either your honors, if you're in the sciences, if you did a professional degree like engineering, then they look at your 4-year degree marks for that, right? So it has to be the degree you completed at the time of putting the application in. So generally, students who apply for a PhD either have completed their master's, in which case you look at your master's marks, or you might be submitting your master's and don't have a master's at the time of submitting, in which case they look at your honors marks, right? And the same for the master's as well. They either look at your honors if you're finished, or your 3rd year if you're an honors student applying to do a master's. All right, so 1 and 2, much like the master's, there's prescribed points there, and it's done very, very objectively. Now, this track record of your research outputs is something that's introduced for PhD students. And the reason why they introduce it for PhD students is because they expect students who are applying to do their PhD to have a little bit more time in the research field. So you must remember that these are probably students who have either completed their master's or are doing their master's degrees. And at that particular time, they would have expected you to either publish a journal article if you've done very well. And you see, if you published a journal article, immediately you get a 3. And there's no limit on this. So if you publish 1, it's as good as publishing 5, right? So as long as you published a journal article, you get a 3 in this particular field. All right. If you haven't published journal articles and you've went to conference symposiums, then you'll see here that if you went to 2 conference symposiums and you've given presentations, then you'd get a 2. And if you had just one conference symposiums, you'd get a 1 here. And obviously, if you haven't really communicated your research, you get a 0. And part of the reason why they're giving you points here is they want you to now go out and sell your research. They want you to present your research, convince people that your findings are actually important, tell people what you've done and how you're going to make that difference in the world, how your particular research is going to impact the greater scientific community. So they want you to actually show that you've done something there. Now, you'll find that in this area, a lot of you might say, I haven't published a journal article and I haven't really gone to conference symposiums. Now, I see a lot of applications come through. You can put here any internal conference or symposium presentation that you've attended. So it might be the School of Life Sciences had their own symposium, right? And in your own symposium, you presented your honors work at that particular level. You can put down that, I presented my work at the School of Life Sciences Symposium on, and put that down as a symposium presentation, right? You might have done something at our Postgraduate Research and Innovation Symposium. So every year we hold that for our master's and PhD students. And especially if you're a master's student and you spent a year here, you'd have a chance to present your work at that Postgraduate Research and Innovation Symposium. You can put that down as one of your conference proceedings. So if you've actually done something in your school and you've attended the PRIS in any of the years, you can actually go down for 2 conference or symposium presentations and earn a 2 here without publishing anything, all right? And the ones that generally get a 3 here, the ones that who've applied at an advanced stage of their master's where they've submitted a journal article and have it published, and they scored 3 in this particular arena. So you'll see the more that you go on in your academic careers into master's and PhD, doing the research for yourself and doing a research for a mark, or you want to get 60% and 70%, no longer applies. Now you're going to have to produce an output that's going to be out there in the international arena, that someone can actually go to a library, get to see what Koorbanally did on, in 2020, and then look at that particular work. And that's what it's training you to actually do. So if you've done that, you've got a good track record, and that will give you a 3 in this particular area, right? So think about what you've done throughout your academic career. Don't just, say I've done nothing. You might have done something along the symposium presentations that you could either get a 1 or a 2 here, right? So I encourage you to put those types of things on. Remember that we would like as many of you to get funding as possible. So we'd look at what you put here. Obviously, if you say, okay, I did a class presentation, in my honors year, I did an honors talk. Everyone does honors talks in their degrees. You're not really going to get any points for that, right? But it has to be a sort of a school thing across campuses, across schools. You took part in a particular competition. I know in my field, the honors students have a local Saki colloquium where all the other universities come together and the honors students get to present their work. That can be regarded as a symposium presentation, right? It's different from presenting for marks for your degree. Now you're presenting your work in the wider community, and that's regarded as a symposium presentation. So whenever you're presenting your work to a wider community, that would be regarded as a symposium presentation. I've spoken about this priority research areas in the master's. The same holds true for the PhD as well. And for the doctoral students, the originality of the doctoral studies is given 20%, right? And you'll see there's another last one here, potential impact. So unlike the master's where it's clumped into 1, the PhDs are clumped into 2. You have an originality part here, and then you have a potential impact here. So you can separate the 2 from each other. In this originality study, you need to show what your problem statement is, right? And identify what the gaps are relating to that problem statement, and then outline what your aims and objectives are, right? So generally that says here the problem statement and knowledge gaps are comprehensively described. And I've given you an example when I discussed masters, the difference between comprehensive and adequate, right? And again, the same holds true here. If you have shown that you comprehensively study the literature or survey the literature from the time that a field was started, and then up to what's currently done. And I wouldn't, and again, maybe I said this before as well, don't spend too much of time on the initial discoveries. Try to spend time on the last 3 to 5 years to show what's been done recently and how you're building on what's been done recently, right? And again, here, if I could put quantify the number of references that you need, a good comprehensive literature survey at the proposal stage would be 25 to 30 relevant references, including 5 to 10 current references, and even more if the field is actually quite rapid and the field is being worked on currently. You'd have more recent references than older references, right? And if you're going to differentiate between the 2, again, the same thing holds true here. One would have left out stuff either at the beginning or at the end, and left out certain important aspects in their descriptions, and that would be described as adequate and not comprehensive, right? And you see, when you're talking about the research aim, and if you read this properly, you'll see that your research aim must be relevant to the problem statement that you've highlighted. Right, so if I can go back to the example of energy, if the problem statement is that, South Africa has an energy crisis, there's not enough energy to to go around in South Africa, your research aim would generally have to be providing more energy sources to the South African population, right? So part of your aims would be to provide more energy sources to that problem, and the problem was not enough energy sources, right? So the objectives here also need to go, how am I going to now get more energy sources for South Africa? Or maybe how am I going to improve the quantity of energy in one particular source, right? All going to show how you're going to solve that problem of not having enough energy, right? So everything must be nicely aligned. You can't go and say that South Africa doesn't have enough energy and I'm going to look at better ways of burning coal without actually showing how you're going to increase the capacity, right? So maybe we want to do a maintenance task for the different coal stations, and in making them, maybe a maintenance task will not really increase the amount of energy that's needed. And generally, this probably comes because of something. And you want to show in this problem statement that 20 years ago, we didn't really have this energy problem because there were much less people in South Africa 20 years ago than there are now. So we didn't really need much more energy. But now that our population has risen, that's why we need more energy, and that's why I'm going to look at that. And in order to look at creating more energy, I'm going to look at maybe harnessing solar energy and probably putting a solar panel onto caps and allow people to wear their caps. And when they go home, their cell phones are charged, so they don't need to put their chargers onto cell phones because their cap has sort of a link to their cell phones and it charges as it is in your pocket. So that's how you can actually go about. It's a very crude example, but that's how you can go about creating a problem and solving it, and getting aims and objectives for your research, right? So I'll tell you a little bit more about this when I go to the second part of my talk, but I think that's basically how you can actually feed from one to the next to the next. So the problem statement is linked to your aims, and your objectives are also linked to your aims, right? So you have to get these three speaking to each other in order to put together a good proposal. And I said, good will give you 3, adequate will give you 2. And if I can really see that you're beating around the bush here, there's a problem of energy in South Africa, but you actually don't know what to do. So there's a problem in South Africa, and your aim, you say, I want to find more areas in South Africa where there's coal. In the last 60 or 70 years, we would have found all the different areas for coal. So unless you're going to show something here that's very, very good, where finding a new area to get coal is going to enhance energy, it's highly unlikely we're going to fund you, and that will be a bad proposal, a very poor proposal. I can't even think of any objectives here in order to meet that. Maybe you want to do land surveying in different areas to see if there's coal there, so that won't be a very good type of proposal, and it's going to be poor. And move on to the last stage of the PhD one, and that's the potential impact. And generally, in the potential impact, you want to show how your particular idea is going to impact the people around you, impact the country, impact the province, and you want to actually show how it's going to contribute to the national research strategy and the strategic goals of the knowledge economy, right? So remember that you're doing this to make South Africa a better place for everyone. And if that's highly feasible, as I said, it's much easier for someone to believe you if you said, I'm going to put a panel on a cap and wear a cap to charge my cell phone, rather than to say, oh, I'm going to put a panel onto maybe my window and use my window panel to power my entire house. because then, no one's going to believe that a panel on a window is going to run a stove and run a fridge and everything else. But if you want to actually show how you can put panels onto different places in your house, that one probably will, put energy into your stove, the other put energy into your fridge, the other put energy into your geyser. If you want to show research into that, that's now a believable idea, that's a plausible idea, and someone's going to probably fund those particular ideas if you can show them that, it's good. The potential impact in there is that it's going to relieve the national grid of energy, so that households won't actually have to tap into that national grid as much as they do now, and you won't need to create extra resources at a government level, because every household will actually generate enough energy to run their own small households, right? So that's going to have a huge impact, and then you must state that, right? Now, what is the difference here between comprehensively stating that and adequately demonstrating that, right? So comprehensively would be that you use some literature as well, right? So you don't just say, I think this is going to be better because if I put a panel on my stove, my fridge, and my geyser, it's going to relieve the grid of electricity. You probably want to say here how much of electricity households consume as opposed to, industries. You've got some literature to show you some data that you want to put into your potential impact here, and say that if we do this, 25% will be alleviated, or 13% will be alleviated, and so forth. You actually got some values, you've got some numbers, you've got some literature. That's a comprehensively demonstrated potential impact. Adequate would be that I can see the idea, I know what impact it's making, but he didn't support this with data from the literature. He didn't support this with studies that were done already. So that would be adequately described. And then partially demonstrated with minor gaps would be that, I'm just saying that I want to increase the output of energy, and then I'm going to put solar panels everywhere, and that's going to help the problem of energy, without actually giving much details. That would probably give you a 1, right? So think carefully when you're writing these, and think carefully of how you want to phrase these in order to make an impact to whoever is going to assess your proposal. I'm going to stop there and take some questions from the audience before taking a short break and coming back for the next part of it. Right, so if there's any questions, you can add it to. Teresa, is there anything you want to add at this stage?
No, I think it's you've covered all of it. Yeah, I think the students must just not underestimate the importance of referencing and using in-text references. We had a few questions the other day, and people wanted to know, should they do in-text referencing? And I think that is essential. You can't just stick a bibliography at the end of whatever you wrote. You have to show that you engaged with the literature, and that, and the reader must know that you're on top of the literature.
Yes, no, thank you for that. It's very, very important. So if you're going to say something like South Africa has, 70% of the population having electricity interrupted, in a 5-day week, you can't just say that. You can't just make a statement like that. You're going to have to put some sort of literature assigned to that. And when you make that particular statement, at the end of that particular sentence, reference that literature, right? To say Koorbanally et al. Or Kutza et al. Did this study and showed that 70% of the time people don't have electricity. So you can't just make up things as you go along, because I was in tea the other day and people were talking about the electricity problem, and people said that they don't have electricity. So I'm assuming they don't have electricity half of the time. You can't just say, it's not really scientific. So in-text citations are very, very important. Mankai, do you have anything to add on your end? I'm just picking up some things from the chat here. If one has an average below 65, should they even try and apply? or should they just forget about it? So if you have below 65%, then you don't qualify. If you don't qualify, then your application will not be sent forward to the NRF, because in-house, we would be required to look at those students who qualified and put an application in. So I would say if you have a 64% in your previous degree, not qualifying for the call would be, you either be wasting your time or putting an application in that's not going to proceed past the first round. So that's one of the criteria for NRF postgraduate bursary, that you need to get 65% either in your third year if you're applying for masters and you're doing your honors, or if you have 65% for your honors and you completed and want to do a master's, and for your PhD, 65% in your honors if you're still doing your master's, and if you completed your master's, 65% in your master's. So that's a major hurdle that you're going to have to make. The other one is, I will be assessed if I'm doing an honors degree in 4 years and not completed any degree so far. I'm doing a degree in engineering and I hope to do my master's next year. So what will happen if you are still doing your 4-year degree and you want to do a master's and you don't really have anything yet? What will happen is that you will put your proposal in, right? And at that particular stage where you're being assessed, we will look at your credit weighted average to date. So if you're still doing your degree and you don't have any mark to go on, haven't completed a degree yet, we look at your credit weighted average to date and we'll submit your proposal based on that. And when you do get awarded, it will be subject to you making 65% in your degree if you do get awarded. So you can go through the motions. If you do get the bursary and you get your degree and you get 64, then you won't be eligible and they won't award it to you, right? But you can apply all along, and at the end, when you do get your marks, then they'll assess you and either discard you at that point or give you the bursary if need be. Can you give me the differences and similarities between the purpose, aim, and objectives when writing a proposal? I'll get to that in my next, in the next few slides that I have, right? So if you don't see it, then just ask the question again, but you should see what the difference is between the purpose, aim, and objectives in the next slide. Can we kindly have this recording? Yes, I'll send a recording to the, as a communique to the entire college after we've done this. Right, should we include an entire reference list in the attachment section, or should we include the list after every section of the proposal that we complete? Right, so there is a section on attachments, and Professor Kutsa spoke about in-text referencing. So I would firstly put an in-text reference to say Kutsa et al. 2005, Koorbanally et al. 1997, and then put a complete list of references as an attachment in your NRF proposal. So in text, so you can't just go and say that, watches are very good, but we need to find blue watches now. And then at the end, you put a reference, a list, blue watches, or the need for blue watches in South Africa, right? That's not going to be good. You must put the in-text citation to say that blue watches, not many people in South Africa have blue watches, and give a reference to say that, Dawson et al. Said there's not many blue watches. And then if someone wants to go and see that particular reference, they must go to the reference list, and then they can find that particular reference, read up about that, and then make up their own mind, right? So the two are very important: in-text citations and include a reference list as an attachment in your NRF proposal. All right. During the honors degree, what is expected of us in terms of learning? What are the important tips? Okay, I don't think that's applicable to this, this workshop. And the others, if you get less than 60. So if you get less than 65, you haven't got the grade to apply for funding from the NRF. So I would encourage you to look at other sources of funding other than the NRF. right, if you haven't made 65. I'm not going to touch on extension bursaries today, but if you have any questions on extension bursaries, you can email me privately and with your questions, and I'll be able to answer some questions privately about extension bursaries. I'm not going to discuss honors applications today, but a lot of what I say today will also hold true for honors applications, but I'm not going to go into the honors applications, but maybe look at the, the talk today and try and apply what I've said here. The same will hold true for an honors application as well. All right, and the last one is a specific one, which I'm not going to go into. Okay, so I think that's a good point for us to stop here. It's 2:51 now, and we'll pick up on the next part at 3 o'clock. So at 3 o'clock, we're going to look at the next part of the presentation, which shouldn't take too long. It should be about 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And then I'll show you what to write, how to write it, and then maybe distinctions between the aims, objectives, hypotheses, all of those things in the next half. So we're going to take a short break here, maybe get a cup of tea and come back. And I'll see you. We'll start very promptly at 3 p.m. and we'll try to end at 3:30. So I'll see you just now. In this session here, we're going to look at the second part on how to, or what to write and how to write it, and hopefully give you some pointers, right? So slide number 5, I have the different types of things that you need to write for both a master's application and a PhD application. And just like how, we've said that you need to score you. So we'd look at those sections and score the different types of, things that you write in your proposal as well. So for masters, we're going to score you on the abstract and project outline, but in the PhD, we're going to score you on the abstract, the problem statement, the aims, objectives, and the potential impact. So PhD students have to write a little bit more than what the master's students write. And generally, as I say, you've got to have your originality in there, right? So for PhD student, we've got to see that this is a novel idea. You're not just doing what everyone says. And note that originality doesn't just mean changing one variable to say that, okay, I'm going to take, boys and do a study with boys, and then I'm going to do a study with girls, and then I'm going to do a study, with animals, and then I'm going to do a study with something else. But each time I'm doing the exact same study, so the originality, it might be original because you're changing a variable, but the degree of originality is not there. And as I said, you want to make an impact. You want people to give you funds to do this research. So for instance, if at a particular stage, there hasn't been studies on females in this particular area, you must highlight, what the importance of doing a study on females is in this particular area. And that might be original, right? But you can't just say one variable, I'm going to, give panados to men, see what happens. So I'm going to give panados to females and see what happens. Then I'm going to give panados to chimpanzees and see what happens. The degree of originality is not too high in that particular proposal. All right, so let's tackle the abstract first and see what to write in an abstract. And most students get the abstract wrong. If they haven't come to this particular workshop, or they're writing the proposal on their own without any help from either senior students or supervisors, they really don't know what to write in the abstract. Now, the abstract is sort of a snapshot of your entire research proposal, right? I must be able to get an overview of your entire research proposal in this however many words. And you'll see later on, I think Prof Kutz has given me a few slides where we've got some screenshots, and you'll see there it allows you 6,000 words, it allows you 500 words, it allows you so many words. An abstract is generally something 500 words or less. And it's a very brief summary of the entire proposal. And if you can, you all go to the movies, right? So most of you have been to a movie, and some of you watch TV, and you see sometimes when you're looking at an ad break, you see they tell you about a movie that's going to start at 9 o'clock, right? And in that, they've got 2 minutes to tell you about a 1.5-hour movie. And they don't actually show you everything or try to include everything in that 2 minutes. They show you just the important points of the movie, those that are most exciting, those with the points with the best action in it. They put all that. It's something to make you want to watch the movie at 9 o'clock, right? So it's not something to say, okay, in this movie, this person acts there and that person acts there, and this movie is about this type of thing. They want to put something with an impact, something to have some oomph, so you want to actually watch that movie at 9 o'clock. So you're watching a 6 o'clock news edition, and this comes on during the break, you want to log in, right? So it has to be because you only have a certain amount of words, it has to be very, very clear, and it has to be very, very concise, right? And generally what this particular abstract is, it tells you what the aim of the project is, how do you aim to do it, identify the gaps in the literature on all these, and what results you're all going to achieve in one particular concise paragraph, right? So generally you want to write very concisely about the aim. So you're not going to if you're going to write about the aim in your particular application, you're going to flesh things out. So here you're going to say that the aim is to make a drug that will help cure cancer, right? In your proposal, you're going to flesh that out and say that, there are many drugs that can cure cancer, but all these drugs are not so effective because, although they have 50% possibility that you'll get cancer back, or 90% possible, but you can't really cure cancer. So you're going to look for one that either has better efficacy that, what's already on the market or not, right? So this main aim of the project in your abstract needs to be, I know what this study is about. It's about cancer, so immediately it catches my attention. And then in your abstract, how do you aim to do it, right? So in your abstract, you're going to identify a particular gap in that literature. So there'll be many people trying to find cures for cancer, but what are you going to work on, right? What drug are you going to work on? What aspect are you going to work on? Where is the gap? What have people not been doing, or has not been looked at in the last 100 years or so? Is there a gap? And if there is a gap, what is that gap? You can highlight it very briefly in 1 or 2 sentences if possible, right? You're not going to flesh it out, right? So you're going to say, I'm going to find, my aim is to find a cure for cancer. No, I've surveyed the literature, and in the current literature, nobody has looked at iron and how iron can complex to drugs to cure cancer. So I'm going to look at that. And you can't just say, I'm going to look at iron to complex to drugs, and cure cancer. You're going to have to show now very concisely in this abstract that iron drugs have been shown to, have an effect in maybe 2 or 3 other related illnesses. So iron drugs do have an application in medicine, right? So you can identify that gap in the literature and give the reader a glimpse that it is possible. So it's not just something that you thought of, give the reader a glimpse that it is possible to do this in science. And once I identify the gap, I know what I have to do. I'm going to make these iron drugs or drugs that are chelated to iron and try and test them. Then you're going to say that once I make them, I'm going to test them for their anti-cancer activity. Then once I test them, how do I know that they're better than other drugs or not? I'm going to compare them to the known drugs. And once I find that they're better than the known drugs, I'm going to see whether or not they're toxic. And if they're toxic, then it might not be good, but I'm going to evaluate its toxicity. So in a nutshell, you're trying to give the reader a snapshot of whatever you're going to be talking about in your proposal. Because each of these points now you would flesh out in your proposal, right? So later on, when we talk about the proposal part of it, you know, the literature survey part of it, you're going to flesh all of these things out in your proposal, but you're capturing each part of that in 1 or 2 sentences, at maximum 3, in your abstract, right? And maybe conclude by what do you aim to achieve at the end, right? At the end of it, you want to find maybe a lead compound that can be developed into a drug. That's what's going to be your ultimate aim, right? So if you achieve that, if you find a lead compound that can be developed into a drug, you've actually done your job as a chemist, and you know how the you know, your study is going to impact in this particular field of cancer research, right? So that's your abstract. So the main thing is try to capture the attention of the audience, try to capture the attention of the reader in a very concise form, right? By giving them a brief look into what they're going to expect when they start to read your proposal. Because a lot of times, even if, you know, at the stage of the institution, if I got 50 proposals to write, to read and to go through, I'm going to read the abstracts, and then if I have to sift out, if I've got 10 to choose from 100, I'm going to choose maybe to read 25 of them. I'll read all the abstracts and then shortlist 25 from which to choose 10. So your abstracts are very, very important to catch the reader's attention as to why your study is the best study to actually fund going forward. I'm just trying to move the slide forward. Right. Now, the next part here talks about the project outline. If you're a master student, right, your project outline should actually contain these particular important points. Now, it should contain a rationale and a literature survey. And note here that referencing is very important. Professor Kutzer talked about in-reference citations. That's going to be very, very important when you're providing a rationale or background to your topic and providing a literature review. So if I'm going to give you money to do a study, I want to see that you actually did your homework, you know about the topic, you've read around the topic, and you know the different types of things that have been covered to date on that particular topic. And the only way that you know what has been done to date on that particular topic is if you did a good literature search, right? So and I'll run with this theme of energy. If you want to make solar panels, right, you would have to look, and you've got an idea about solar panels. Maybe you've got an idea that, you know, tiny circular carbon-based entities will attract, you know, energy from the sun better. You've got to now tell people that solar panels consist of all of these things. People so far have made solar panels with X, solar panels with Y, solar panels with Z. You know, they've looked at all the different solar panels. This is what it consists of, you know, and now your idea is to make solar panels with your particular carbon-based entities that are going in there, right? So you would want to now provide a rationale first. Why do you want to make solar panels? Because you want to provide energy to South Africa, and this can also be globally as well, right? So you want to show the importance and where, you know, why you're doing that particular. So rationale is, why am I actually doing this particular research, right? That's a rationale or background. You know, I want to do it because there's a problem with energy, maybe in South Africa and maybe globally, and I want to increase, you know, the amount of ways in which we can harness energy in the world. And then, as I said, the literature review, what has been done. So you're going to introduce what are solar panels, what it consists of, what have been the major developments in solar panels, and then leading up to, in the last 3 years, these have been the major developments, and this is where my study fits in. You know, maybe my study doesn't fit into the last 5 years of research, but my study fits in better to what has been done 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, they might have forgotten about that avenue, and everybody since 10 years ago has went off on this tangent, but nobody thought about the other tangent, and I'm going to run with the other line now. You're going to show that in your literature review, right? Identify the gaps in the literature, right? So the gap would be no one has looked about carbon-based things in energy enhancement. So you want to probably take things like tiny pockets of coal and put it, to enhance energy. So I'm using really silly examples here, but just to give you an indication of what to do, right? So the gap in the literature might have been that no one has looked at that before. So what do you intend to do now? I intend to do that, because that's now going to enhance, have a good chance of harnessing the energy. How are you going to do it? Methodology, right? So the methods in which you are going to do it has to be tried and proven, right? Unless you're doing research into methodology, in which case you need to tell the reader exactly what research in the methodology you're actually going to do. But generally, there's ways of doing things, and you're going to pick the methodology up when you're reading around maybe how people have put things into solar panels. There might be a certain methodology to actually insert things into solar panels, and you want to actually now use the methodology by maybe Smith et al. Or maybe, Botha et al. Might have used this, or Kuzwayo et al. Might have done that. You might want to put now, use that methodology in those papers in your study with some slight modifications. So people know now that the methodology that you're using in your particular study has been tried and tested. They can see the different references in which this methodology was tried and tested, and they know that you're going to do something similar in your type of research, right? So that stands a good chance of getting funded, because I know now there's a chance of this methodology working in other places if it's worked before, right? So be very, very, it's very, very important to put that methodology into your project outline. Some people leave the methodology out altogether, and that's not too good, right? What results do you hope to get? So at a particular time, do you hope to get a particular result? Maybe after 3 months, this is what I hope to get. After 6 months, this is what we hope to achieve. And at the end of the master's project, this is what we hope to get at the outset. Right? So put in those, what do you hope to get at each point, each salient point in the particular proposal? This is what we hope to get. Always include the significance and impact of your work in the outline as well. All right, so the significance, and you can probably sell this quite nicely as well. The significance of doing this particular research, is very high, especially in South Africa, where we have load shedding and there's not enough electricity to go around, for our population. The impact, going to have a huge economic impact. I mean, imagine all the businesses that will run on an uninterrupted supply of energy if you do actually be able to get extra energy resources for the country, right? So the significance and impact is also a point where you can sell your particular reader. And for each of these, you're going to assign or attach references to that. So it's not just writing on your own, it's also bringing in literature that shows there is an energy crisis in our country, right? So it's significant to find more energy. The impact, to show maybe that our economy has suffered in the last 10 years because of load shedding, and that if you do find alternate ways of having energy, you'd probably lessen that burden a bit, right? So it's not just saying the stuff. As a scientist, you want to have evidence, you want to have substantiation, you want to have things that support what you said, all right? So please put that in wherever you can, and that's how you reference. What problem do you hope to solve must come out in your project outline, right? And we spoke about the significance, we spoke about the rationale. So these are all linked, your rationale, your significance, what problem do you hope to solve? At the end of it, we hope that energy is no longer a problem anymore. So for the next 50 years, we know we sorted, unless, after that, the population starts to boom, and then we don't know, what to do at that stage. But hopefully by then it's going to be somebody else's problem and not our problem. But right now, what problem do you want to solve to make our world better for the next 50 years, the next 100 years? And hopefully, if you can, see a long time solution for that. And you can conclude by telling people how you're going to make life better and improve on what we already have. All right, so you can say, currently we burn coal, we generate electricity, but now moving to the new solar system, the solar panel system that we want to provide, we're going to make life better for everyone because you have to go home. You don't have to worry about, having electricity to cook because your solar panel will have heated during the day, stored enough energy for you to use your stove for 2 hours, and you don't have to worry about cooking when you go home. You would have stored enough energy in your solar panel to run your fridge, so your food will never spoil again, and then the amount of food that spoils in South Africa is cut down to a minimum, right? So tell people that in your application, let them read that in your project outline, and provide evidence as I say along. If you're going to say something like, 30% of South Africa's food has to be thrown away because, it gets spoiled in fridges when there's no electricity, attach references to that. You can't just make that up. You must have seen that somewhere. And that's where the referencing comes in. Reference a work that actually had that stat in it. And I put this other 2 lines just to show you a little bit about research and what we have, trying to do in the research realm. The first says, when I was young, I drove to work in a Lamborghini. That's a father telling his son that he drove to work in a Lamborghini. And then the son says, Dad, did you melt the polar ice caps? Don't forget to charge the car when you get home. Right. So you can see now this is actually part of the future. And now in South Africa, I think we have the first hybrid electric car. So I see the future in the next 30 to 50 years or so. I think we're all going to be driving either electric cars or something similar that doesn't run on petrol, and oil reserves are going to deplete at some stage or the other. And then we're going to have to put all our cars, our Lamborghinis and Porsches and everything that runs on petrol and diesel into a museum. And the only thing that it'd be good for is actually to go in there and to have a look at, right? So this is actually a step into the future. So if you're going to be doing research on making your maybe carburetors better or more efficient, that research is very short-sighted for the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe 20 years at most. If you're going to be doing research on electric cars, then that's doing research for the next 100 years, 150 years. So I'd much rather put my money into that research than into research, where you're going to improve things where you're going to use petrol-based cars. And the other one says, Dad, why did you have telephone lines in your day? Did you hang the telephones from there? That's a son to his father. And, many of your children would have never, I'm sure when your children, grow up, they would have never seen a landline. People rarely use landlines these days. Most people keep their cell phones in their pocket. And I know many households these days don't even have a landline. Most people have cell phones. So that's going to be a thing of the past. And, you're going to have to keep up. So any research that you're doing into landline telephones is going to be obsolete. I'm not going to fund you. If you're doing research into the cellular industry and mobile phones and stuff, that's going to hold you in good stead. All right. So just an outline of, or just an indication of what to write in the master's outline. For your PhDs, we have sort of the same sort of trend. But as I said, there's 3 different things that you have to write on, and I'll focus on the 3, one by one. The first is the problem statement. What problem are you trying to solve? And I spoke a lot about this, problem statement, and I keep on reiterating it because your application for funding must show that you're trying to solve something or trying to solve some sort of problem or create some new knowledge that can be used in the world, right? No one's going to give you money just because I want to know why the sky is blue, so I'm going to do research on that. It's not really going to help you. But if you're going to show that I want to know why the sky is blue because the color of the sky might help in the sun's rays being available for energy, someone might give you money for that, right? So I keep on reiterating that this problem that you have to solve has to be something that's topical, something that's worrying, you know, the world right now, so that we can actually find solutions to our problems. Show the severity of the problem in your problem statement. That's very, very important, to show that the problem that you're trying to solve is actually a problem that's affecting a lot of people today. All right, if I say that I'm having trouble getting up in the morning because my alarm clock, you know, doesn't work, so I want to create an alarm clock that always works, you know, it's not too much of a problem, because, you know, there's other ways of getting up, right? So I wouldn't actually say that it's actually a severe problem. But when people are dying of COVID-19, and you want to find a drug that can actually cure COVID-19 or help with the COVID-19 problem, that's going to be a good problem to solve, because that problem is very severe. People will die if they don't have that drug, right? So the severity of the problem is actually high. You can say, you know, in the last 3 years, 1 million people around Africa has died of COVID-19, and there's no cure for it in sight. You know, 20 million people in the world, whatever, has died, and there's no cure for it in sight. I want to find a cure for that problem. That's showing the severity of that problem that's arising, right? Some statistics will also help. So if you can quote the amount of people that died, you can quote the amount of people that, or the amount of food that was wasted because your fridge doesn't work. If you can quote the amount of people that didn't eat when they went home because there was no load shedding, and, you know, all the uncomfort that actually caused, if you can quote those statistics, it's going to actually help in your problem statement. So, right, so you need to see things like 30% of the world's population did this, and 50% of the world's population was affected in that way, and 99 out of every 105 people will, you know, do this and that. We want to see those types of things in your reports and in your problem statements, right? And then provide references to support your claims. So you'll get these types of things in, you know, general reviews that are written, WHO documents, government documents, important government sites. You'll find things that show statistics. Take statistics from there and use those statistics when you write your problem statement, right? You might want to quote a few of those. Right, now jumping to the aims and objectives. In your aim, right, you need to show what that particular aim of your study is. Do you want to find a cure for cancer? That's a very cliche one, right? I want to find the cure for cancer. If you want to reduce the side effects, right? How do you intend to do that? You need to highlight the gap in the literature in the aim of the project, right? So in your particular field, you might have said that no one has actually thought about, as I said now, you know, iron-based drugs, right? So what is the aim of your project? The aim of my project is to create a new iron complex drug. So don't just say, I want to find a cure for cancer, right? Everybody wants to find a cure for cancer. It's not going to make too much of an impact on me when I'm trying to sift your application out from the others that I have to choose. Imagine now 70 of you apply and I have to choose 20 from the university. I'm going to have to sift out your applications, right? So be very, very specific here. I want to find, or I want to reduce the side effects of the cancer treatment by finding a drug based on a natural remedy. That's much better to say than just want to finding a cure for cancer, right? And link that to the gap in the literature. So link your aim to the gap in the literature, it will hold you in good stead. So if nobody has actually looked at maybe the chemicals in banana peels, you know, to be used in cancer treatment, right? So you can say the aim of your project will be to find compounds in banana peels that may be used in cancer treatment, right? So that's the aim, to find a new drug in banana peels that can be used as cancer treatment. You know, that will be a good aim. That will be something that creates an impact to your reader. Then link your objectives to your aim. How are you going to reach the aim, right? What is your plan in doing that, right? If I'm looking at this, silly example of banana peels and finding a drug in banana peels, first I want to, the plan is to get maybe 500 banana peels, maybe try to extract them, try to differentiate between the different components in banana peels, and then maybe try the different drugs that I get or different compounds I get from banana peels, try them in anti-cancer assays. That can be my plan. That can also be the methodology that I'm using, because maybe that same type of methodology is used for plants. They take plants that's used in a particular setting, used by traditional healers, and they try to find drugs in those particular plants. Now you want to do the same, you want to try the same type of methodology, but now on banana peels, right? Because now you want to find drugs in the banana peels that will help cure cancer, right? So the reader knows now that the plan is to, get 100 banana peels, try and find the drugs in there, use methodology that works. And, if you use methodology that works, the chances of success is higher, right? So you're showing now someone that your chances of success is actually good. And are you building on work already done? So there might have been a study, why you just chose banana peels, Did I actually just choose banana peels because I didn't know what to do? So I thought about things. I was eating a banana at the time and I saw a peel in the bin and said, let me study it. That's not, I'm not going to give you money if you just did that. But if you read work where they sort of did a preliminary study on banana peels and how banana peels actually showed reduced tumor effects in someone, now you want to run with that idea and you want to work on that idea. They might have just done a very preliminary study. They might have just rubbed a banana on a tumor, and when they rub the banana peel on the tumor, it might have decreased in size. Now you say, okay, if they rub the banana peel on the tumor and it decreased in size, there must be something in that banana that caused the tumor to decrease. So I want to look at the chemicals. So you can see now I'm building on work that was already done. I'm building on the work where they rub the banana, and now I want to go and find out what the chemicals are. Is this a completely new idea, right? It might be an idea linked to something that was already done, but the new part or the novel part in this is that no one has looked at the chemistry behind that banana peel, and that's a completely new idea. So highlight what is completely new in your idea, right? So you might find that a biologist might have taken the banana peel, extracted it, and taken extracts and used extracts to try it on cancer, right? You now want to get compounds, and chemists might now be able to get the compounds. So that's a completely new idea, getting compounds from the extract. So no one has done that before. I want to do it. My chances of succeeding is very high because people have done, similar work in other areas and they've been successful. They've taken plants and they've got compounds from there and they were successful. So I can actually do the same thing with banana peels. And then again, referencing, and keep on stressing referencing in every slide that I do, because that's going to make your work more impactful. And the last slide. So the last slide is the potential impact. And here you want to show what your impact of your work is. Are you going to make a difference to the world by doing this? If so, what difference is it going to make? Are you going to make people's lives easier? Are you going to make people's lives better? And if so, by how much? Right? So if you're going to make people's lives better because now you've got more energy in the grid, they're not going to suffer from energy constraints anymore. You've made people's lives easier. You've made their lives better. If you're going to make a new drug for cancer where people are dying in 6 months or a year, but now you've used banana peels and you found a drug that's actually going to cure them, you've made someone's life easier or better by doing that. And you've actually made a difference to the world. So the potential impact here must also be shown. And you can also bring in referencing here as well, because the potential impact that you're going to make, you must remember that if you're going to be saying in your proposals that 70% of South Africa's population does not have electricity between the hours of 5 and 9. And if you got the solar panel that's collecting energy, so when 5 o'clock comes and load shedding starts, they're actually going to have power between 5 and 9. You know, you actually made an impact to 70% of South Africa's population, right? So put those types of things in there. And when you're saying that 70% of South Africa's population doesn't have electricity, you need to have, as I said, a reference to show some statistics where they show those values being quoted, right? And how's it going to make people's lives easier? You're going to say, probably they're going to be able to cook and they don't have to think now about rearranging their schedules because they already have power when they go home. I just put, you know, 3 silly examples for you here. And the first one's from the past. I made a phone that people could carry around with them as it operates off a beacon and not through wires. Imagine how convenient it would be if someone did this and someone did do this. So imagine our lives now without cell phones, right? We can't imagine our lives without cell phones now because it's very, very convenient. So see what impact that having cell phones actually made on our lives, right? Both good and bad. And then I made 3 new antibiotics against a wide spectrum of pathogenic bacteria. These can be used when currently used drugs are no longer effective against pathogenic bacterial strains due to mutations. This will save millions of lives. I wrote this here, you know, based on the fluoroquinolones. When the fluoroquinolones were discovered, we saw that, you know, there were a whole range of diseases that could actually be now made much better, or there were cures for them or treatment for those sorts of diseases where we didn't have cures before because some pathogenic bacteria, we didn't have antibiotics for them. So when the fluoroquinolones were, you know, discovered, that made our lives better. That was a huge impact to medicine and to, you know, the population in terms of drugs for bacterial compounds for drugs. So, you know, that made a huge impact, right? So those 2 on the past. And then one for the future, I found a new antiviral drug against SARS-CoV-2. COVID can now be treated with this drug. This has reduced the mortality rates of COVID-19 by 99%. So this hasn't been done before, right? So that's been done, that's been done. This hasn't been done before, right? So this is something for the future. Imagine if you find the next COVID drug now that people don't have to worry about COVID anymore, right? So that's a huge potential impact because we don't have to worry about catching a virus when we go to other countries, and already our mask mandate has been dropped. But imagine if we find a drug, we don't have to worry about getting the virus, because if we do get the virus, we can be treated. And on that note, I think I'm going to end there and then open it up to questions to see if there are any questions that we can actually take. Right. I don't see many questions in the chat. I see a question about if you're submitting a paper for review, but it has not been published, should you indicate that, or does it not count? If you submitted a paper for publication, I would put it down as a paper submitted, right? So if you've submitted something, do put it down. It will count some weight, but it might not count as much weight when we're doing the metrics, right? So the metrics say there must be a published paper, right? So if you do have, you know, conferences and you do have a paper under review, you know, it might carry, you must remember now that we have to sift out applications. So anything that you're going to put into your application to give you the best chance of success, you have to put that in there. It might give you a better chance, right? So I'd put that in there. May I kindly confirm if you can apply for NRF to fund you for your honors if you're currently doing your final year on a 3rd year undergraduate degree? Yes, if you want to apply for honors, you can do that while you're doing your 3rd year degree. And then I've got internal closing dates. I can't recall offhand, but I'll circulate the closing dates. I think it's it's soon. I think it's the 8th of July or somewhere around there. I just need to have a look again, but I think it's somewhere. So I think you've got about a week or so.
Yeah, it's the 8th of July.
8th of July. Thanks to Teresa. So it's the 8th of July. I think that's a final date. Oh, it's in the chat there. And I see a hand by Nomzamo. Nomzamo?
Good afternoon. I wanted to ask if it's possible, if you're not funded for first semester, to be funded for second semester, maybe edit your application. For instance, last year I was doing my honors and I applied using the marks for third year and it was 64 point something. But now, since I've finished my degree, like my honors degree, I reached the average mark, which is 65 and above. So I want to know if it's possible to edit the application from last year and put that up attachment, the new results, to be funded for next semester for masters.
Well, I would put a new application in if I were you. Right, so put a brand new application for master's degree in, and maybe outline the progress that you're making with your degree as well. And yeah, so I would do that.
Okay, so if I put the year that I'm applying for, should I put 2022?
Well, you are applying for 2023. So you won't get, you won't be funded for 2022 because that funding happened last year.
Oh,
right?
okay. All right. That's fine.
If you probably know that you're going to finish this year, I would actually put in an application for a PhD, not for a master's.
Oh, right. Okay. No, I get you. Thank you.
Okay. Good. I don't see any questions. So I think there's one more thing for me to show you before we can actually call it quits. And all right, can you see my screen showing you the presentation on the screen? I've got sections of the NRF scholarship application.
No, we can't, sir.
Can't see that. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So this is courtesy of Professor Kutzer, and these are some screenshots of the new system. All right, so the new system says select this option if you've been recruited by a supervisor who has an NRF grant. And that's very, very important. Sometimes, you know, I've probably looked at, maybe overlooked the importance of having a supervisor involved in this whole process. Now, it's not a must, but I would highly recommend that once you choose a particular research area, you look at the different expertise within the university, identify a supervisor working in that area, speak to the different supervisors working, and choose a particular one that you want to work with, right? So there may be many people working in medicinal chemistry. You might want to chat to the 10 people that you know are working in that area. After chatting to them, you can make up your mind about who you want to join, and then maybe look to him or her for particular advice in that area. And a lot of supervisors already have NRF grants, which means that they have money to do the research, and they can actually fund the chemicals, the consumables, all the running costs for that research. And they will have a UID number, right, that they will give you. So when the NRF looks at it, when I look at it, I can see, okay, you linked to Professor Kutzer with this UID number. The chances of you succeeding is higher because now you have an established researcher linked to your grant who already has NRF funding. Right, so your supervisor is very, very important, or the potential supervisor can be important in this whole process. Right, your supervisor can also inform you which category of the NRF grant to select. Right, so you have some areas here that you might not really know whether to choose IKS or, you know, the India Research Corporation grants or whatever it is. Right, so a lot of supervisors have money under the incentive funding for rated researchers, but others do have money in the other places as well. So they can tell you which area to select for their particular grant. Right, so that's one screenshot. The other one, and you can see here, is don't miss these maximum characters, right? So it says a character limit here for 450 characters for your descriptive title, right? So make sure that you don't exceed those character limits, right? It's going to be truncated, especially when you copy and paste. Make sure that you check, because you might just have something that stops in mid-sentence and, you know, midway through the sentence ends there, gets truncated, everything after that gets truncated, and your last 5 sentences made an impact, but they've been cut out because you've exceeded that maximum limit, right? So be very, very careful about that, right? But generally you'll be required to put in a title and a descriptive title in your application, right? For master's applications, your master's supervisor, be sure to put in the role there, your proposed supervisor or your current supervisor, put those in. I think a lot of them require the head of department as well. So put those roles in for master's applications, as well as doctoral applications as well, a proposed doctoral supervisor or current doctoral supervisor, right? And I think this is also important. I see they're getting very strict now. If the proposals that you put the, you know, the doctoral supervisor or your master supervisor doesn't respond, and you put down that Professor Koorbanally is going to supervise you and Professor Koorbanally doesn't respond, it might mean that Professor Koorbanally is not really interested in your work, so they'll reject your proposal, right? So let your supervisors know that I've submitted my proposal, you're going to be asked for a reference pretty soon, please respond when they do ask you for a reference. Right, the sections that you need to look at is your project outline and your national imperatives here, right? So for the master's research, that's what you're going to do. We spoke about the project outline. I advise you to fill everything out in a master's template and a Word template, all right? And once you get things in a Word template, copy and paste into the particular boxes, taking into account the number of characters that they allow, right? And keep on checking, don't just copy and paste, check whether everything has copied and pasted over, and keep on checking your work, you know, as and when you do it. All right, the next part is the problem statement I spoke about for the PhDs. You're going to write your problem statement in here, take note of the character section, the limit, right? There's a 6,000 character limit for each section, your problem statement, your aims and objectives, and your potential impact. So 6,000 characters is very, very generous. It's, you know, about 5 to 10 pages, but, you know, don't also waffle along just to make something extra. We went through what you should actually put in each of these areas with your referencing as well. So take note of those character limits. Right, and then choose your categories. Again, if you don't know what these mean, that's why I say work with academics and work with your supervisors. They will advise you on what the national strategy is, what the sustainable development goals are, you know, what the broad categories are, national priorities. So please work with your supervisors in those areas. Right, there's some examples here. You know, generally, as I spoke about energy today, water, you know, the problems with our water and sanitation and climate and health and well-being, right? So that'll be easy for you to see where you fit into this. If you don't see your area here, choose the one where you see it fitting best, right? Sometimes you might fit yours into one of these areas to try and choose these areas very, very wisely. Right, again, if you don't know, try to ask around so we can get some help. All right, and the last thing I think from my side is to wish you well. And when you do complete your NRF application, I'd advise you before you submit to print it out or to maybe print on PDF, make sure everything is fine. And then before you submit, give it to your friend, give it to your supervisor, you know, to read through and give you some comments. So try to get this done maybe 2 or 3 days in advance, and then get comment and get some appraisal before you final submit. Then you can actually do some corrections to your proposal, do some amendments, and then give yourself the best chance of getting funded as possible. And I think that's all from me. Prof Koorbanally, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just hope people have already started the applications because there's only like a week left. But to give it to their, especially if a supervisor has been identified, to give it to them to read over and to just put it all together in MS Word, because nothing gives as bad an impression if it's full of spelling mistakes and things like that. So yeah, and I just wish people all the best.
Yes, thanks for that. Yes, please try as far as possible. Your grammar and your spelling and everything needs to be to the T. The last thing an appraiser would look for, look to in a proposal is look at a proposal or a application that's full of spelling errors. It just puts the reader in a bad mood and creates a bad impression. And if we're going to choose, from a lot of applications, it's highly likely that the ones with a lot of errors are going to be put at the bottom of the pile. So make sure that you do all that before you submit. So thank you everybody for attending this session, and I wish you well in your proposals, and I look forward to seeing them at the screening stage. So bye-bye and have a good afternoon. Bye.